Well, welcome back. So, imagine if you could make mental cravings disappear in seconds. If you really think about it, if you didn't have cravings, then you literally just have free choice. That means there'd be nothing pushing you into your addiction. It also means that you wouldn't have anything influencing you to relapse. So, I mean, I suffered mental cravings for 10 years, even after I'd quit my substance addictions. It wasn't until I accidentally discovered this technique that literally made the mental cravings disappear that I actually became free of mental cravings. So in this video, I'm going to show you, in fact, I'm going to teach you this technique step by step. And I'm also going to go over the pitfalls. It's very important that if you want to use this technique that you understand the pitfalls, otherwise it won't work. So this is the first time that I've ever taught this publicly, but I really want you to have it. I want you to experience the power of what's in your own hands, because you're not helpless. You don't have to be out of control. You can have this amazing access to the power of your own mind. So let's first of all understand what mental cravings are. We really need to understand that in order to understand how the technique works and why it's going to work and how to do it properly. So we're going to go through a list of the common assumptions about what mental cravings are. Now, bearing in mind I'm talking about mental cravings, that's cravings that occur in the head. I'm not talking about cravings that occur in the body, okay? That's a whole nother story. So don't confuse those. So the first assumption that people make is that a craving is produced by the substance or the behaviour. So if it's a substance, might be alcohol, or could be, marijuana, dope, or it could be, some other opioid, or it could be nicotine. So the assumption is that because that drug is in the system, it's in your brain, and that's what produces the craving when those levels get lowered. Okay. The other category is behaviours like gambling or online gaming or pornography or whatever. So that's another category. We'll come to that when we talk about brain chemistry. But let's talk about the drug. Now, if it's the drug in your system that produces the craving, that means that when the drug is out of your system, you should not get cravings, right? When the drug is completely out of your system, you should not get cravings. Okay, when your brain chemistry is normalized after it's all gone. Now we know all of the drug is out of your system in 10 days, pretty much. Okay, and certainly, after 20 days, let's say. Well, we know, I'm sure you know, and maybe even in your own experience, that you've had cravings even though you've been drug-free for months or years. Like me, 10 years, I still had mental cravings. That what my brain chemistry would have normalized. It wasn't because there was no drug in my system. My brain chemistry was normalized. So it wasn't the drug in my system that was producing the mental cravings. It was something else. Okay, so we can rule out purely the drug causing the craving, right? Effectively, yes, when the drug is in your system and your whole system gets trained to become dependent, something changes in your brain. Now, it's that change in your brain that results in the craving, not the actual drug in your system. Because when we take the drug out of your system, you still get cravings. So there's something else going on, and just put a pin in that idea about the change in your brain. Okay, we'll come back to that. Now, the next hypothesis or explanation of what mental cravings are is that people will often assume that the mental craving is a thought in your head. Now, this is because whenever you get a craving, you're obviously thinking about your addiction. So a craving and the thought also kind of happen at the same time. So people assume that they're one and the same thing. But again, this is not true. Why do I say that? Because this would mean that every human who ever thought of a drug or something addictive would then get a craving for that. That would mean that people that have never experienced addiction or never experienced that substance would get a craving, but they don't. You can offer somebody, anybody, something. It doesn't mean they're going to get a craving. Now, even somebody, you might say, oh, that doesn't matter because they've never been addicted. Okay, well, what about someone who has been addicted or who, in fact, is already addicted? If you have your addiction, let's say it's a substance or a behaviour, if you do that over and over again, all in a row, there'll come a point where you don't want it anymore. So you've still got the thought for it in your mind, but there's no craving. Okay, so it's not the thought, because the thought's in your mind. It's not the thought by itself that produces the craving. Otherwise, every time the thought was there, you would get a craving, right? So we can rule out thoughts as the definition of cravings. Now, the next one is brain chemistry. Now, brain chemistry, we have to say, has got some correlation with what cravings are. We know that with most addictive behaviours or substances, there's a high level of dopamine that is released, and this hits the nucleus accumbens, which is the pleasure centre, and causes a real excitement and about having that experience. Now, back in the day, this was a kind of a marker for your brain to remember pleasurable experiences or pleasurable locations or pleasurable things, like where water might be located or where honey might be, or that, to procreate, things like that, or where you might find food. And it would also cause you to expend massive amounts of calories and effort to get that pleasure. So that's what it was for. And so it does produce motivation. Brain chemistry does produce motivation. However, and this accounts for, online gaming or gambling, things that aren't necessarily an external substance going into the body, because your brain produces its own its own motivation. Now, the thing is, this is not, you might think that this is the whole craving, but when I teach you this technique, you'll realize that it's not, because this experience can disappear straight away, almost instantly, if you do it properly. Now, if it was all about brain chemistry, then how would you be able to make the mental craving disappear? So it's more than that. Okay. Now, if I ask, and I used to routinely ask all of my clients, because I used to do one-on-one appointments many years ago, and I would go through this with them, and I would get to the point where I'd say, look, it's hard to define, isn't it? But I bet you it feels a bit like a nagging feeling in your head. And before I'd even finished to ask the question, I'd see people nodding, that they'd instinctively be assuming that this feeling or this craving is a feeling in your head. This is kind of bizarre, but it's almost universally true that most people believe or assume that they're experiencing some kind of feeling in their head. Now, we might say it correlates a little bit with the brain chemistry, But it's not explained by that because we can make the craving disappear. And surely the brain chemistry doesn't change that quickly. I don't know. But let's go with the feeling in the head hypothesis for the moment. Now, if the mental craving was a feeling in the head, then basically we would be able to investigate with our feeling sense, wouldn't we, and find out if it is a real feeling. If it's a feeling in the head, we use the feeling sense to find out if it's a feeling or not, correct? Okay, so before I teach you the technique, I want you to go through a hypothetical experiment, a mind experiment. Imagine that you've just been asleep, and when you're asleep, you had a dream. And the dream was that you had a really splitting headache. Now, I'm sure you've had a dream where you've woken up and the dream was that vivid that you had to check to see if the dream was real, right? Like you might have woken up and had to check where you were, because you might have been in some danger, you know. Well, in this case, and the reason why you were checking is, even though your eyes were awake, is because the imaginary reality in the dream is something that feels so real that even when you're awake, you have to check. Okay? That means imagination can appear real in waking life. So imagine now that you've woken up and you've got this headache. Okay, so in the dream, you believe you've got a headache. When you wake up, you're obviously believing that you've got a headache, so much so that you have to check. Even if it's just for a few seconds, you're still believing during those few seconds, and your reality at that time is that you've got a headache. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to check, right? Then you check with your feeling sense, and what would you feel? If it was an imaginary feeling from the dream, that means it's not an actual feeling, it's imaginary. Therefore, when you use your feeling sense to check in your head, you'd come up with nothing. There'd be no feeling, just blank, right? That's because it was never a real feeling. It was an imaginary one from the dream, but it carried over into your waking life. In other words, it was a delusion in your waking life, but it was so strong that you believed it and you had to check. And when you checked with your feeling sense, you found nothing, no feeling. Okay, let's come back to the craving now, the feeling, the so-called feeling in your head. Now, what if the mental craving in your head was a delusion, just like the imaginary headache? What if it was an imaginary phenomena that you've never checked out? I mean, have you ever checked in your head to see what that craving is? All right. And if you have you made sure that you've used the feeling sense? Well, I bet you have not. All right. It was very rare that someone had ever checked. So, all right, next time you get a craving, what I want you to do is use your feeling sense to check. And this is the technique, because the mental craving in your head is not a feeling. It's a delusion. It's something you believe is a feeling, but it's actually imaginary. It's your subconscious producing a phenomena to motivate you, to make you do what it wants. And the way that we can prove this, and I know you may not believe me right now, but you prove it when you do the technique, and you can make that mental craving disappear. So what I'm going to describe to you now is how to check, right? Now, if you use your feeling sense and it's not a real feeling, it should disappear. It should no longer be there, all right? Because the feeling sense does not detect anything other than real feelings, correct? So an imaginary feeling is not a real feeling. It's an imagination. It's not a feeling, right? Therefore, feeling sense would draw blank, yeah? Okay, so this is the basic head check. All right, so you're using your feeling sense, and what you do is you systematically check each part of your head to basically eliminate whether there is a craving there or not. So you start with the front, like in behind the forehead, and you check that with your feeling sense. You can do it now, and there's no craving. Then you check the top, like inside. You don't use your hand, but I'm just showing you where to feel. And then the back, right? And then the left, and then the right. And you kind of linger there maybe 15 seconds each spot. So you've gone front, top, back, left, right. And just to be sure, just on the inside, like on the inside of your skull, just go round and round again, all right? Checking each part, and then into the middle of your head, right into the middle, okay? And linger there. And you'll notice that there is no craving there. If there was a craving, it will have gone away. Why? Because it was not a feeling, it was an imaginary phenomena. And this is why I say that even if there's brain chemistry has changed because of the dopamine, somehow that's not what's really creating this craving, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to make it go away so quickly. So this is a beguilingly simple but yet very, very powerful technique. And once you master it, you can literally make cravings for anything go away, even cravings for sex. And I've tested it. Cravings for cake, cravings for any of your addictions, cravings for anything. And even what I would call kind of like a negative or reverse craving, like procrastination or fear. It's the same. So make sure you use your feeling sense. It's the main thing. Now, I want to emphasize that this head check does make the mental craving disappear, but it's not the complete solution to ending your addiction. Why? Because I used to think it was, but then I realized that you kept on having to do this every time you got a craving. In other words, it didn't stop the cravings from being generated. Now, we weren't born with cravings, were we? Nobody is. So something has changed in your brain as a result of the addiction. And this technique, while it gets rid of the mental craving, doesn't get rid of the generation or the process in your brain that generates the craving. Okay, so it's part of a broader system that forms the complete solution. But obviously, this technique alone doesn't get rid of the generation of cravings. Okay, that's a whole bigger topic. Now, I just want you to remember that, but definitely try it. Definitely check it out, and you can use it for many types of cravings. Okay, now I want to tell you some pitfalls to avoid, because it's very important. If you can easily get caught into some pitfalls. It's really a misunderstanding, not applying correctly this instruction, and so it's really important that you listen to these pitfalls. Otherwise, you'll try it, and if it doesn't work and you've done it incorrectly, then you'll think it's no good. Okay, so let's go through the common pitfalls. The first one is not using your feeling sense. Like I said, you've got to use your feeling sense. What is the feeling sense? It's the sense that feels sensation. It's the tactile sense. It's what, you feel it when you touch things. All right, you can feel the seat that you're sitting on, or you can feel your feet, the weight that you're standing. Okay, you can feel your clothing against your skin. That's feeling sense. You can feel feelings inside of your body to some extent. Okay, so that's the sense that you're going to turn on and focus on to use this. Now, a lot of people don't use their feeling sense. They imagine, but they don't realize they're imagining, that they are imagining. I've had people say all sorts of things, like they're imagining a ball of light in their head, the different parts. And I said, I didn't tell you to imagine a ball of light. I said, use your feeling sense to check if there's a feeling there at all. Some people imagine what it might be like inside their head. So they're imagining some kind of dark space or brain cavity, whatever. So it's not about imagining. If you're imagining, right, you're not using your feeling sense and it won't work. The next thing is when you have a craving and you have the thought for your addiction at the same time. People think that the craving disappears and the thought disappears at the same time. And therefore, if the thought does not disappear, that the craving has not disappeared. That's because there's a confusion that the craving equals the thought. We've already covered that. The craving does not equal the thought. Okay? Earlier in this video, we proved that. Now, these two phenomena can occur at once, the craving and the mental craving in the head and the thought at the same time. Now, the way you handle this is you do the head check, you linger in the middle of your head, and you'll be feeling kind of blank or empty or spacious, just no feeling, effectively no feeling, right? But the thought to have your addiction is still there. Now, at this point, you just keep feeling inside the middle of your head. And when you continue to feel, you'll notice that the thought, while it's still there, the thought's still there, but it's not changing and creating a craving in the middle of your head. There's no urgency with the thought because in the middle of the head, it's staying the same. It's just no feeling. But if you get distracted from the feeling sense and then switch to thinking, then you will no longer be feeling and the technique will no longer work. And then you'll be straight back believing that you've got a craving, and then you'll get fight or flight, and you'll get urgency, and then you'll think, oh, this is no good and I have to have my addiction. So this really does, require some mind control. You have to recognize what you're doing. You have to distinguish between thoughts and cravings. You have to use your feeling sense and stay with the feeling sense and not get sidetracked into the thought stream. Okay? Doesn't mean you need to make the thoughts go away. They don't create cravings. They're just coming and going. All right? The next pitfall is, believe it or not doing the technique at all. Many times my clients, they would say, oh, I tried it, didn't work. And I said, well, tell me the story. They tell me the story and I said, okay, so did you do the technique? And they go, no. And believe it or not, it's kind of understandable that they sometimes forget to do the technique. Why? Because when you have a craving, usually you've got fight or flight. And what happens in fight or flight, if you've seen some of my earlier videos? Fight or flight is part of the old brain. It's evolved for emergencies. And in an emergency, you haven't got time for complex thinking like investigation, right? It turns off the frontal cortex or dulls it down. So you're not using your investigative kind of thinking, which is what we're trying to do here with the technique. So it's easy that you would forget to use your feeling sense and do the technique because you're so caught up in the fight or flight. So this does require opening your awareness in order to succeed with this. But just be aware of that, if it didn't work, then think, am I using my feeling sense? Am I getting distracted and not using my feeling sense because I'm caught up with thoughts? Am I even doing the technique at all? Now, the last pitfall of the major pitfalls is physical cravings. These are more phenomena in the rest of the body. Now, often you can make a mental craving disappear, but there can be some physical phenomena in the body, and subconsciously what this does, it's like a feedback loop that instantly creates a new mental craving without you even realizing it. You think that the craving never went away, or you think it went away, but then came back so quickly that it mustn't have gone away at all. But what it is, if you slow it all down, like slow motion, craving goes away. But because there's some other physical phenomena, cravings going on in the body, it quickly regenerates another craving to get. This is all your subconscious, using all of your mind and your body to make you have your addiction. So if there's a physical craving, it can regenerate a mental craving. But again, if you do the head check, you linger, right, and you are able to stably hold that, you can also be aware if there's any other feelings in the body. Now, I'm not going to go through how to handle these physical cravings. That's more a longer term skill that it takes longer to learn. I really, I'd have to teach that, and coach that. So we can't necessarily do that here. But some of you will, some people don't get physical cravings. So some of you will be able to just quit your addiction with this technique. If not, then it's because there's physical cravings, or there could be some deeper reactions going on, emotional reactions, or some other memories and things coming up triggering the cravings. That's beyond the scope of my YouTube videos, where I'd need to get involved directly. But this is definitely worth trying, no matter what your situation is, because it shows you the power of the skill that you can develop. And this is something that you can learn by yourself. You can test it. Now, lastly, I'm going to teach you a faster version of the technique, because you can't always, have time to go. Someone offers you a drink, and you can't just go, hang on a sec, head, front, top, back, left, right, round twice, linger. Oh, no, thanks. You don't have time for that, right? So that's why I call it the basic head check. It's basic. It's like trainer wheels on a bicycle. It's a training scenario. Do that first, but then move on to the flash and hold. Now, the flash and hold is simply going straight to the middle of your head and feeling all your head at once inside, and realizing that there is no feeling there, and that it's blank, there is no craving. Okay? Now, but you need to practice engaging your feeling sense with the basic head check first, and you need to linger. Once you've got the hang of using your feeling sense and lingering, you can just whole head at once, into the middle of your head, whole head at once, and hold that. Linger for at least 30 seconds. Now, I can do this flash and hold right now. I'm doing it right now while I'm talking to you. And I can honestly say I have no craving in my head right now. And I can keep talking. I could be doing something, waving my hands. I can continue to hold this skill, because once you've developed the skill, you can just turn it on instantly. So if this has been of interest to you, if you try this and you find that this actually makes a difference to you, and you want to learn more, you want to learn the full skill, the full range of skills, including dealing with physical cravings, including if you might have any deeper reactions that are, or even traumatic memories coming up when you're trying to quit your addiction, well, that means that you really do need some deeper support and coaching, which is what my Addiction to Freedom course offers. So if you want to find out more about that, then there's a link in the description to my free masterclass. The masterclass will take you through a lot of this in detail, and you can then either, just go onto the website and enroll, or you can book a call, and you can book a call straight from a link in the description. If you want to just talk directly to me or one of my team, just find the book a call link in the description, make a time anywhere in the world. and we can, our programs are online, even though I do face-to-face coaching. Um, so you can go ahead if you want that service and book that. But other than that, I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and I look forward to really helping you. Remember, you're not broken. You're in the process of waking up, in the process of transformation, because all of this is about increasing awareness. And when you increase awareness, awareness does not increase selectively, it increases uh, in inside and outside in your whole being. And that causes you to transform. So I look forward to helping you on that pathway, and look out for the next video. Take care. Bye for now.